Welcome to the Reentry Room, the podcast where we stop pretending that parental leave ends with a calendar date and start designing what comes after. I'm your host, Alexa Starks, speaker, leadership strategist, and creator of the Reentry Blueprint and mom of two toddlers. And today I'm sharing something personal. The moment I came back from maternity leave, I'm going to go with my second maternity leave and what I desperately wish someone had asked me. Because one good question and the space to answer honestly could have changed everything. But instead, I was left to pretend that everything was fine, I was all good, and perform my way through reentry. So let's talk about what that costs us and how we fix it. I remember when I first came back from my second maternity leave after having my daughter, and she had really bad reflux. I'm talking about the reflux where she was throwing up after every feeding, like 5, 6 times a day, 7 times a day, throwing up. And not like, oh, I spit up a little bit. No, projectile throwing up, full on throwing up. She had really bad reflux, and we took her to doctors. We took her to specialists, make sure there was nothing wrong. We were so concerned. We had ultrasounds to make sure there was nothing like physically wrong with her stomach. It was awful. She would be crying when I would try to feed her. I was crying while trying to feed her. It was rough, like truly rough. And it fortunately peaked around 6 months. But when I came back from maternity leave at a little after 3 months, it was brutal, like brutal. So I remember when I came back from maternity leave, I was still sleep deprived. We had just started doing sleep training. So she wasn't like fully sleep trained yet. So I was exhausted, was crying all the time, covered in throw up all the time, was still foggy. My body was still mushy. And I remember having meetings when I first came back, and I had a full to-do list to get ramped up. I had a bunch of one-on-ones scheduled with people to catch up, and start was starting to get added back into all my emails and everything. And I remember like silently hoping that no one would ask me anything too real. But I wanted someone to ask me something real, not just, "How was your leave? Welcome back. Are you glad to be back?" Not, "How's the baby sleeping?" But something deeper. I wanted someone to ask me, "How are you adjusting? What feels different now? What do you need to feel supported? What's something I might not realize that you're carrying?" Like, imagine if my boss had asked me that, or a close colleague had asked me, "How are you adjusting? What do you actually need to feel supported?" But nobody asked, and I put on a brave face. No one could see my shirt was covered in spit up, the throw up dried on my body because I didn't have time to take a 5th shower of the day, and so I just smiled and said, "Oh, everything's fine, everything's good." And I'd be crying in between meetings, crying when I was trying to feed my daughter, and it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And nobody asked, "What do you need to feel supported?" Or "What's something I might not realize that you're carrying?" And so I did what many parents do. I smiled, I pushed through, I tried to act back to normal, and it cost me. It cost me my confidence, my capacity, and my voice. I didn't have the energy to speak up. I didn't have the energy to show up as much anymore. It was emotionally exhausting. So, here's how questions can create safety or silence. Reentry, returning from maternity leave isn't about policies. Yes, it's great you had maternity leave or and pay or whatever the situation was, but it's about the moments when you return. It's your first one-on-one with your manager or your team, your first project meeting back. It's the first time that someone checks in and actually listens. And if those moments are missed, doesn't matter how generous your leave policy was, because what we remember isn't the handbook that you had 3 months of maternity leave. No, it's whether anyone saw you when you came back. Did they see you and what you were struggling with? Did they understand and empathize or even sympathize with what you're going through? When no one asks what's changed or how you're actually doing, we assume that we're supposed to pretend that everything's fine and nothing's changed and I'm back to the Alexa that I used to be before kids. And that's where the quiet spiraling, the downward spiral starts. When you start over functioning and trying to do too much, you start resenting and you start burning out and thinking about exiting and quitting. And the most important thing is is making sure that your manager can ask you those questions, but they're creating the space, the safe space for you to honestly answer. Because the job didn't change, but no one made is making space for you to have changed. So, let's flip this. This is how I teach managers and companies to support working parents returning from leave. So, if you're a leader or a manager of people or even a colleague who wants to support the working parents coming back from leave, write these down. Remember these. These are small questions with big ripple effects. But let me first preface this by saying you need to have the space and the culture so that they can answer honestly. Because if someone had asked me, "How are you actually doing?" when I came back from leave, I probably would not have answered honestly because I didn't feel safe enough to answer honestly without having my credibility questioned. If I said, "Oh, I'm struggling. My daughter has really bad reflux. I'm crying every day. I'm covered in spit up." I'm probably not ready to take on my full load of work at this current moment. But in 3 months from now, in 6 months from now, that'll all be different. But I didn't have the safe space to say that because I felt like my credibility would have been questioned, my capability would have been questioned, any sort of leadership promotion track would have been called into question. So the most important thing here is to have and create the safe space for these working parents to answer honestly and to work together with them. So, here are the big questions to ask them that have really big ripple effects. One, create that door opening. How are you really doing? Not just with work, but with the transition back. What feels different this time around? Is there anything about your return that's felt harder than expected? And then validate the identity shift. Is there anything I might not realize that you're carrying right now? How has your sense of pace or focus changed? And are there things that you'd like to do differently this time around? And then lastly, creating that psychological safety. Ask questions like, "We know this is a transition and we're in it with you. You don't have to over explain. If you need space, we'll trust you. And if you're still if and you're still a leader here, we haven't forgotten." Yeah, some of these questions might feel awkward, but you know what's more awkward? Losing a high performing employee or colleague or friend to silence because you didn't have the balls to ask them how they're actually doing. So when leaders ask these questions, re-entry becomes a moment of trust building, not of quietly unraveling and downward spiraling. So if you're a working parent listening to this and you felt like no one saw me, no one checked in, I had to act like nothing changed, let me be clear. You weren't wrong to want more. You were in a system that didn't plan for your return. That doesn't make you fragile. It just means that the system's underbuilt. And that's what I'm here to fix. You deserved better questions, and you still do. And now, whether you're navigating that return or building it for someone else, you get to be part of redefining what support sounds like and looks like. If this episode hit home, please share it. Send it to a colleague, a manager, or a company that wants to do better but might not know how. And if you're in a leadership or HR role and want your reentry culture to match your values, bring the Reentry Blueprint workshop to your team. We don't guess what support looks like, we build it. Link is in the description below. This is the reentry room where we stop bouncing back and start building forward. See you next week.